Although, I don't know, we could role play multiple people.
And don't forget to remind me, we have a handout for at the end.
Okay, excellent.
So Elizabeth, have you done improv before?
I studied acting as a kid and actually majored in theater for 2 years in college. My sister, who's actually now deceased, but she had an MFA and was a high school magnet acting teacher. So I gave you that preface to let you know that I went to National Criminal Defense College when I was practicing, who did a weekend class on improv and trial techniques, and it was professional actors. Come on in. It was professional actors teaching improv to lawyers, and it was like, do your closing argument from the perspective of the murder weapon. Do your closing argument from the perspective of the bag of cocaine. And it was very, at first I'm like, oh, please. But it was very interesting and very useful. And I came home and told my sister, like, man, you are missing your calling, because instead of being this kind of overworked, underpaid high school teacher, you should go teach, rich private practice attorneys how to do improv. But,
I thought you were going to say go be a public.
of course, I was going to say, I don't know if they made a ton of it, but I mean, they probably, it was probably a good gig for them. And National Criminal Defense College also uses actors in their trial practice institute. And those are scripted, that's less improv and more scripted, but I tell you, it makes such a huge difference. I mean, those actors look so good. So you do a client interview, you use them as witnesses. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what she does.
That's great.
Yeah, so that was never my strength. My sister was in improv troupe, she's very good at improv, but this was never my strength, but I do know a little actory stuff about it.
Well, that's sort of how this was born. I'm not a lawyer, and feel a little bit like I'm the only non-lawyer here, which is probably true. But I studied acting and taught high school theater for 5 years. Was my first career out of college.
Where, if you don't mind me asking, not to interrupt your introduction.
No, this is an informal introduction.
All right. I decided I put past.
King George, Virginia,
Okay.
which is outside of Fredericksburg in that northern Virginia area. And then I moved to New York City to have more theater opportunities, and I started taking improv as a way to add to my acting skill set. And is it okay to start with the
I think
tell us a
so.
little bit later?
Yeah.
Okay.
But so I noticed in my improv classes that there were a ton of lawyers in them, and I was so confused because at that time I had sort of not much interaction with lawyers. So, as I began to talk to them and try and figure out why, because I thought it was going to be like all actors, comedians, performers, and they were like, no, this really, we're encouraged to take these kind of classes to help with the litigation skills, to help us think on our feet, etc. And it's fun. So that really sort of opened my eyes to the other uses, and then I sort of fell into higher education. I worked at Columbia Business School for 5 years, and they bring in improvisers into orientation. So they bring in folks from Chicago. Bob Coolhan, who we'll reference in this presentation, has a company called Business Improv, and so they bring them in. It's like the second or third day of orientation to help them collaborate and bond and to learn the importance of team building and the concept of yes and, which if you were in the teaching as improvisation yesterday they referenced, and we'll go into in a little bit more detail here. So that's sort of, so Allison and I were at a happy hour and I just sort of mentioned that this was an interest. I still perform and teach at the Harrisburg Improv Theater near where we work. And so I was talking about all these applicable skills that improv teaches. She was like, well, I'm teaching the internship class. Why don't we try and make something work for law students? So I'm sort of an unlikely attendee at this conference, being the director of admissions and financial aid, but it just also is an example of yes and of, you know, just being open to collaboration in different ways that are unexpected.
Yeah, and so I teach this as part of, and I wish I could find the clicker, but okay. So I teach as part of my general internship class. I have a unit on communication because I feel like students always think they're good communicators, but they never typically get as good a feedback on communication as they think they are. So we task this as a communication unit in the internship class, and I like to have a lot of interaction in the units, and we have discussion as well. But this gives the students practical exercises to go through as part of their communication class. And because I have a general class, I have two sections. So we've consolidated this presentation today, but essentially we have sort of like intro level version about how to maintain and develop professional relationships from a communication standpoint. But then we also have a continuing to maintain those relationships among evolving interests, competing interests, and increased responsibilities in the workplace. So we do sort of build on it for the second program. So this is a quote from Marcia Hunter, who's author of The Articulate Advocate. And just wanted to lay the stage with this. So often lawyers are tempted to read some theoretically perfect script they have written in advance, but they cannot possibly read something they wrote earlier because events in a courtroom unfold unpredictably in real time. The entire trial is a giant improv around their client's unfortunate theme. So with that said, I wanted to go through, I know that, let me move over here. I know that many of you are familiar, but I wanted to go through why are we teaching communication and some of the other skills that improv teach. And so starting with the McCrate report, I'll sort of fly through these because I know most of you are familiar with them. Problem solving is one of the major skills mentioned, as well as communication, and I think two things are important under the communication skill: assessing the perspective of the recipient and using different types of effective communication. And our presentation today will talk about different types. So this is sort of the why are we teaching improv as part of the internship class. Additionally, the foundations for practice study, much more recent. The top 10 foundations categorized as necessary in the short term, really 2 of them, interestingly, are communication related. So 2 of the 10 are communication. One is also emotional and interpersonal intelligence. And so this idea of active listening and being able to respond is in a way that is not sort of pre-programmed is one of our major concepts that we teach through this class. I also wanted to highlight, so these are not in the top 10, but they're also part of the skills necessary in the short term for lawyers. Adaptability in a professional environment. I think that's really important and something that improv teaches our students. Integrity and trustworthiness. So we'll talk about this in the context of an improv troupe or a team. You have to be able to trust your team and build them up. Stress and crisis management. There were quite a few sessions yesterday on the well-being of law students, the high levels of anxiety and stress that they're all experiencing. And so, you know, this type of communication skill set really teaches people how to fail, and that's normal to fail, and how do you bounce back after failing, and how are you able to sort of adapt to different circumstances and scenarios. It has sort of the side effect also of providing some humor and laughter, although one of the myths of improvisation is that it's about comedy, and that's not necessarily the type of improv we're teaching here, but it can be sort of a side benefit that there is some humor involved. And I talked about the collaborative nature. And then also the roadmap, you know, these are the aggregates. So he had sort of several different industries, professional competencies that were important to lawyers. This is the aggregate of all the different industries. So government, private, legal aid, and I believe there was a 4th. But very important to critically important skills that improv is going to teach our students. We see again this concept of responsiveness, listening to the client. The team aspect of things is really important. And also this ability to sort of problem solve, and we'll talk about it as sort of this idea of divergent thinking, coming up with solutions before getting into the analytical mode. So often lawyers start from an analytical perspective, and we're going to sort of take a step back from that. Lastly, the Schultz and Zedek 26 effectiveness factors. So from the perspective of the client, they, a lot of those 26 factors have already been repeated from the other studies. I also wanted to pull out these 3, which we did see a little bit of the perspective taking, but that idea of really listening to your client and innovation and coming up with solutions. And so these are some skills that, why are we teaching this is because there's been a lot of research around these skills really being hard skills that lawyers need. Okay, and I'll turn it over to Leah.
So Allison, covered sort of what lawyers need, and now I'm going to sort of talk about what improvisation provides. So obviously communication, which it was brought up in multiple forms in the lawyering techniques. Collaboration. It is there are people who do one-person improv shows, but it is unusual, and in most cases, collaboration is absolutely required, as well as active listening. If you're teaching, meditation and self-care in your courses as well, this pairs nicely with that because you cannot improvise effectively if you're always thinking ahead as to what you're going to say next, because you have to react to what is in front of you rather than trying to think 3 steps ahead. Resilience, as Allison talked about, you're never going to master improv 100% of the time. There is going to be failure involved. So teaching that, keep going, the more you do it, the more practiced you'll become. Trust, you have to learn to trust your teammates, your partners to take good care of you. You want to be a good partner. And then again, the present moment awareness, taking in everything, not just the listening with your ears, but listening sort of with your whole body, knowing what is happening in the room around you, being conscious of your whole environment.
And I wanted to jump in there. Leah sort of mentioned it. I do teach mindfulness meditation as part of my internship class as well. And at the beginning of this class series, we do a mindful listening exercise, just a brief one to sort of dive into this, which I think, as Leah mentioned, is a nice compliment.
So the very first thing we start off with in our intro class is an exercise that really introduces improv and the concept of yes and. So we're going to do this exercise with you all, with a small group. It should be fun. But would we have one volunteer that would be willing to step out of the room? Great, thank you. So we ask one person to leave, and we'll fill in the group on some other information. And it's a pretty simple exercise to lead as well. So we're going to ask her to come back and to present some ideas for making the workplace environment better for the clients at her job site. So the first round, I want you to shoot every one of her ideas down with why they will not work.
You might affirm them and say, yeah, but I mean, we don't really have the budget for that.
Right. You can yes but them, you can no them, you can no with a reason, but you are not going to fully entertain any of those ideas. We'll then sort of switch gears. So when we do this in a class setting, which I'll wait till she comes back in actually to discuss that so she doesn't miss out on that.
Yeah.
All right, so then when we switch, and we'll do that by asking her to
present. Maybe we could ask her to present on ideas to make the conference better? Or do you want to change the topic?
Yes, I do want to change the
Okay.
topic.
Because typically we relate it to the internships, but for this.
How about ideas for the next externship
Yeah,
conference?
that's a good idea.
And then in that scenario, you're going to affirm her ideas and add to them. And then we're going to examine the difference between those two.
So I'll participate too. And I'll,
Yes.
Okay. I'll be here. I got her here.
You gonna go grab her? Okay.
Yeah.
So for this exercise, we're going to ask you to present to your group, with these three, ways in which you can make the environment in your externship better. So if you want to do it with your particular office, maybe that's, changing up the lobby, maybe that's changing the way you bring clients back. Whatever it is, you're going to make some proposals for changes to make your environment better, this pretend environment.
Am I pretending to be in the legal services or some other?
Yeah, so
legal-
typically we ask it in the context of students at your internship site, what would you do to make it more friendly for clients, or what would you make it? So if you want to go from the perspective of your school or pretend that you're in an internship, either way is fine.
And so you're going to present that to them, and you're going to get some feedback on that.
Okay,
Great.
I have 2 seconds to think.
Yes.
I could make it more welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to decide if I want to do my school or my former legal services office.
Yeah, do the legal services office.
I have. Okay, so the legal services office that I worked in before I went to UCLA is just off of Skid Row, so there are lots of things we could do to make it more welcoming. It was, I think, even walking up to the door, to the front door of the office, of the legal services office, was, it didn't look at all like it was legal services or like it was even open. And so I think even the exterior, putting plants outside, putting some sort of signage that was more obvious to clients that this was a place they could come for services. And then once they walk in, I think the lobby we could put plants there, we could put signage that might, posters that might make it.
Yeah, but who's going to
calming.
water these plants? I mean, we're short-staffed as it is.
So I guess if I brought the plants in, I had to take responsibility for watering them.
I mean, I have concerns too about changing the signage, because part of the issue is being in the environment where we're in, we don't necessarily want to just have people know where we are and walking off the streets, because our caseloads are so high already. I mean, we already have sufficient clients coming to intake.
We need to fundraise to get more money to provide more services if we're not currently meeting the needs. So I think for the people who do come in, we want it to feel like a safe, welcoming environment.
So we have to fundraise on top of our caseloads?
Yeah, we have a fundraiser.
Is that the best use of fundraising though? I mean, don't we really need services someplace else besides the look of the place? Don't people expect it to look a little dumpy when they come to legal services?
I think that's one perspective, but I think that if the place looks dumpy, it doesn't seem welcoming, it doesn't seem like a place where they're really going to be respected and served, then it's going to make our jobs harder and take us longer to we're improving.
Sorry. You're fine. We'll get you in on the next exercise.
That's going to make our jobs harder in the long run and more time consuming if we're having to break down barriers with clients from the very beginning of our job. But if from working with them, but if we're in a place where our clients feel welcome, they feel safe, they feel like they can trust us with providing them the best services possible, then they're going to already have some of their guard down and be willing to open up about their cases and talk to us
I
about their
think the thing
problems.
is, in this day and age, I don't know how many clients really need to come up to the office either. I think it's safer if they just call us on the phone and really reduce the number of resources we use to maintain the office and really just focus on the telephone communication.
So my experience with clients is that telephone is an inadequate tool for really building a relationship with them and really getting them to trust us and give us all the information we need to best represent them. So I feel the face-to-face is, we can't replace that.
But to serve as many people as possible, I think, we're not necessarily spending the time to develop relationships. We want to just get things out there and get them some quick advice so we can move on.
Although, what are they moving on to? I mean, I think that if you're not really helping the people that you are able to serve, if you're not really resolving crisis situations for them, then you're not really providing services, and you're not going to ultimately feel fulfilled in your own job, and our clients aren't going to feel adequately represented.
Yes, but do you have any data or studies that actually support this idea that the client rapport, the client relationship really does make a difference in the end?
I have lots of data, and I'll send it to you.
All right, great. So now I want you to switch gears, and instead I want you to propose ideas for the next externships conference.
Propose ideas for the next externship.
Not put you on the
conference.
spot, Lisa, but
But
that's exactly what we're doing.
I wrote one down.
So are you just like you're just saying prompts and people have to sort of respond, is that?
No, we'll fill you, I promise
Okay,
we'll
sorry,
fill you in.
I'm sorry.
Feel free to observe, and when we debrief, we'll make it clear.
Great.
You might pick up on it.
Actually, Lisa.
You might pick up on it as we go. All right.
New ideas. So I'm as clueless as you guys, so. I had to leave the room, so I'm like.
She's a test subject.
Okay.
I had one the other day and I can't remember it. So I think one would be, it may be one that's happening right now that I'm not in, but I'd like to see something about really meaningful collaboration among different partners. Collaboration between schools, collaboration between schools and our partners, and how we can enrich the externship experience for our students, partners, and even partnerships with different players within the law school.
I really love that, because I love when they brought an employer in, and I think we could do more with that. Bringing in other people from the community that the extern host sites of externs would be great. And other departments, maybe alumni relations, maybe other things that are placing students. That sounds like a good idea. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And let's see, what else? I still think we're going to need data management, because I don't think we're ever going to, we're not going to master that immediately, but I think data management issues are really important. And
Yeah, I could really use that in my school, so I'm glad you recommended that, because I think there are other schools doing things that we can all learn from. So I think the externship place conference is a great place to do that.
it's awesome. So, you guys are cracking me up.
Thank you, Betty Ron.
Let's see, what else can we do? I think student counseling in difficult situations, our students are in difficult situations in their placements also.
Yeah, and mental health concerns too on top of that. What do you do when you're advising students? And to your collaboration point, how do you collaborate with the counseling services or even student services in your school?
That's right. I think that's right, and building communication between student affairs, and career services, and externships. I feel like we're sometimes odd personnel.
feel that way. Yes.
See, she's not even.
Yeah, I know, not even trying, like, we do weekly student services meetings, which actually are really helpful because it helps, we often find we're tracking the same students, and so the registrar and their services office and academic support are like, we all have the same folks on our radar, so that's very helpful.
And Sarah, I'm not in there.
I know, I just
get
fly out
invited.
every Wednesday morning, Lisa.
I don't get invited.
Yeah, no date at your school. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Maybe you could present on what are the wonderful things that are happening at your school with the collaboration.
Oh gosh,
I know it's
don't know. There are a couple of things, we're a small school though, so because we're a small school, we all wear a lot of hats. And I know I came from a much, much larger school where I knew I had more direct colleagues who I knew better and were wonderful, but I knew no faculty members, I knew no other departments except for the students because they were next door. And at Davis, I know tons of staff and many, many faculty, and so we have a staff faculty public interest committee. The staff do all the work that who's in the room, but still the fact that it gives me connections with faculty that it's helpful for me to be connected to, and we also are working with some of the same students on jobs and fellowship applications and things like that. So those are two, but the student services one is actually very good. It's our student psychologist, our dean of students, our registrar, our academic support person, our financial aid officer, and me. And so it's most of us that are kind of the heads in student-facing offices. And that I find very helpful. Even in an externship role, when I'm like, oh, this student is thinking about a full-time, but and then academic support may be like, oh, that's not a good idea for that student, or so yeah.
Yeah, breaking out of those silos. Okay, great. Let's debrief. That exercise is over.
You improv your improv exercise.
So what did you notice, having been sent out of the room, about your first experience presenting ideas about making a client site more welcoming versus the second experience of proposing ideas for the next externships conference?
I was in a hostile environment.
Sure.
Initially, in a very supportive environment.
Okay.
What was sort of hostile about it, and what made the second approach?
I was being a little bit facetious. It wasn't really hostile, but it just, in fact, it was very much like a legal service. Being in management, that seems like very much like my experience. In legal services there were just a lot of opposing ideas and trying to be responsive to those. Ideas that were different than my own.
I noticed you had to spend a lot of time defending, your ideas and/or, and it sometimes slowed down the idea process for going forward.
Yeah.
Was one of the things that I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
How was it when we switched to throwing out ideas for the externship? What sort of happened to the group dynamic?
Everybody started jumping in, being very positive and brainstorming.
Even someone who didn't even know what was going on was like,
Collaborative
space.
Yes, where we felt like other people were comfortable jumping in, and it became not just about you. It was a very shared experience, a very collaborative experience.
Yeah.
And there seemed to be more ideas generated in that space.
Yeah.
Initially. Yeah, so for those of you who came in late, we call this our sort of entry-level yes and exercise, and so we send several, depending on the class size, we send several students outside of the room. They're asked to present to a group of their peers on how can you make your externship site more friendly for clients. The first group, essentially what we did the first time, yes but, we might agree with their ideas, but we might just shoot them down right away, and they have to keep presenting for usually about 5 minutes. Even though everyone's sort of telling them why their ideas aren't going to work. And then they switch to another group, or the group themselves switches their approach and then begins to yes and. So they yes all their ideas and they add on, and they keep adding on, and you come up with lots of new ideas. And so it's interesting to observe the students, if they start in the yes but group, when they are asked to switch, they're like wounded, and they go to the next group and they're afraid to like even say anything. And so it's interesting to see how the students react, and even the students in the yes and group sometimes will say, well, you guys are coming up with all sorts of crazy ideas, like I'm not trying to go there, because they're not in on it. But they find that they generate a little bit more ideas and they feel in a more confident space where they can share.
Yeah. And yes, it is fun to watch the body language of those who have been sort of shot down repeatedly go to this next group that is, welcoming and supporting their ideas, and they all of a sudden, you can see their confidence level rise. And we're able to speak to that a little bit too in talking about it.
Did you switch the topic like you did with Lisa, or
So
is it the
that's what
same
we-
topic and they're rotating around, just trying to figure out?
Yeah, and we do have all the exercises sort of written out here that we'll give at the end. We don't want to give away everything.
Yeah.
But
We
it
haven't
depends.
switched the topic when we did it with
We
students.
haven't switched the topic when we did it with students because this is such a small group,
Sure.
sending or 2 out of the 3 people out of the room
Right.
didn't make sense.
Yeah, and then we might say, relate this to their externship site, open it up for discussion. I mean, how many of you think you could utilize this in your externship site, or how many of you think your externship site is a yes but site, or what have you experienced in the workplace in terms of sharing your ideas, and would you, what's your supervisor's perspective like? And we asked people to share a yes and story, something where they did something they didn't necessarily have to do, but they added on to someone's idea and created an interesting project or concept. So that's sort of how we run that. But should we move on?
Likely.
Okay. Do you want to show this?
Yes. So we usually show this brief clip just to introduce the concept of yes and in a workplace setting. And I think I already have it queued up so we don't have to watch an ad.
The challenge that many leaders face is that we're analytical. We think too quickly about why something can't happen or how to correct a problem, as opposed to twisting it and framing the brain that this is an unexpected opportunity. What can I do with it? Improvisation creates a set of learnings, a set of experiences that allows you to fine-tune and hone all of the necessary skills needed to think on your feet and simply react and adapt. The cornerstone of improvisation around the world is a great 2-word phrase called yes and. Yes means that you accept everything that's brought to you, regardless of who brought it to you, regardless of what it is, regardless of what you think it means based on who gave it to you, you accept it at face value. The and means you take this idea and build directly upon it. Now, building directly upon it might seem like it's always complementary, and that's not always true. You can build upon something by taking it apart. You can build upon something by looking at it from a different angle. So the yes creates openness. Just the definition of it, it's affirmation, it's positive, it's acceptance. That creates a style of thinking inside people. And then the and is your reaction to it. The and is the bridge to your thoughts, the bridge to your movement, the bridge to how you respond to others who are reacting to this event in real time as well. Using yes and as a tool, you can actually create environments that foster creativity and foster talent, leading, of course, to innovation. If there is a difference between the two of those, creativity, more of the process, innovation, more of the product. Yes and endows people with fearlessness. There's not a mistake. There's not a wrong way to do something. That's the editing process. And something that leaders have a challenge with is editing too quickly. Again, we're analytical thinkers, we're critical thinkers. We have to learn to take that critical hat off and create an environment in which it's okay for ideas to fail. It's okay for people to take chances. Once that area is created and individuals are flourishing inside of it, you create a second area for editing. It's the difference between divergent thinking and convergent thinking. You have to separate the two so you can diverge your thoughts and come up with this great collection of ideas. And then, once you have this great collection of ideas, you focus on convergent thinking. You start separating the sand from the gold and the good ideas from the bad ideas, and you start editing those out. In order to create this environment in which people can come up with these ideas and diverge their thinking, you have to cling to yes and, so that you're not editing too quickly.
Any final thoughts about that yes and concept and how, to get that across as important for law students?
Is your takeaway for students to, I definitely see the active listening part of it, is your takeaway for them to kind of be yes and in the workplace, or to encourage yes and? Is that what you're also
Yeah.
looking for, or are you just trying to show the contrast?
So we're offering it as a tool, and we had this discussion in our advanced class, where someone was working for a leader who was more authoritative and sort of was like, I have 15-minute meetings, these are the ideas, these are what we execute, this is what we get done. And so he was saying, well, how do I even do that when all the things are always shot down? And so then we had a conversation in the context of leadership style, the culture of your office. And we're not saying you use yes and all the time. It's more of sort of a philosophy for collaboration and a tool that people can use when they're coming up with ideas for projects. Or, I mean, thinking about a government context, you know, a student comes in, has an interesting idea, well, we've always done it this way. Well, why is that? Can I bring different ideas to the table that might change your processes or create a handbook for other interns who are coming in or do? So it really is a tool, I think, and we challenge them to use it to the extent they can with their supervisors of others, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask you all to, for this next exercise, just get up and start walking around the room in a way that is comfortable to you. Just take a walk, to the front, to the back, in a circle if you'd like. Pay attention to how your body feels, what your energy levels are. And then I want you to slowly morph your walking as if a string was pulling your head so that your head is leading your body first. Your head is what we call the leading center. Do you notice any changes to your self-perception or your perception of others?
I feel down.
Yeah, I'm like looking at the ground and I can't see what's in front of me.
Yeah.
Not making eye contact with others.
Do you feel sort of like high status, low status?
Low status.
Low status. All right, now change. The string is pulling from your chest, and your chest leads your body. Any changes that you noticed with this adjustment? Better posture.
Making eye contact.
Yeah.
You just feel more confident.
More confident. Perfect. How do others look as opposed to when we were having our heads lead?
Well, we can see them.
It is easier to see them.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the city for 2 days.
Hunched over.
All right, now your hips are leading. Your hips are the leading center. This usually gets some giggles. Well, yeah, what kind of people might walk with their hips? Like, what assumptions would we make about them?
Overconfident?
Maybe overconfident or like weirdly too laid back.
Shelby.
Or pregnant, like pregnant, have that like
waddle.
or a cowboy.
Yeah, we're cowboy.
All right, and in this next one, your feet are going to lead the way. Your feet are your leading center. This is also maybe a little bit laid back.
No, this one actually feels cockier to me than the last one.
So we all sort of not this exaggerated, but we all sort of have our, preferences as we walk. So now shift back to your quote-unquote normal way of walking and find your seat. Feel free to come join us. It's not too scary. All right.
It's the first time we've gotten up and moved around.
Yeah.
So sort of overview, we just made you walk in various different unusual ways. We generally, because we're a small group, you all felt free to call out things as you were going. We generally have them think about that as they're walking, and then ask them questions like, sort of how did the way you feel about yourself change based on your different postures? Because when you're leading with your head first, you may be feeling more closed off. You may be in a hurry. There's multiple interpretations of this, and this is really introducing the idea that we communicate as much with our body language as we do, actually more with our body language than we do with what we say. So if somebody's walking like this in an office setting, you may not want to interrupt them because they look like they are walking with a purpose, having either something on their mind or they don't want to be bothered.
Yeah, I think it's not only awareness, teaching the students awareness of themselves, but awareness of their clients or others that they're interacting with. And Leah mentioned this, but from the book Silent Messages, he gives the statistics that 55% of our communication is body language, 37% of communication is just the tone of our voice, and only 7% is actually the words, the content of our message. And so the importance of that for communication, it's not just what we say, it's how we say it and how we present ourselves and how our clients are presenting. And that might give us a clue into how they're feeling so that we can interact with them or our supervisors in different ways.
So this is one of the main exercises we use for this. I'll also just mention briefly another exercise that we use. We have a gibberish exercise that sort of talks about that inflection, where we have two students act out a scene in complete gibberish using no
made-up language.
That's absolute made-up language, and then we have two translators that are interpreting that based upon the nonverbal communication, both with the gibberish and the body language, the gestures. Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but have you seen the clip when Stephen Colbert on his old show did the yo? Yo. Yeah, it's a pure, and I think of it because I did acting in Northwestern, he did acting in Northwestern, obviously more successful than me. And it's a classic acting exercise, and I don't know how you find it on YouTube, but it's the same thing, it's like, yo, because it's the same kind of concept. And that might be a good thing to use with students, like who can connect with like somebody they know. Yeah, I think he has the whole thing where he like does that with an intern.
Okay. So let's see what's over there. So we also show this clip.
There you go.
Speaking of Stephen Colbert,
because he was an improv guy.
Yes. But we show a clip talking about Amy Cuddy's theories of power posing, which there are some conflicting reports with that research. But I think it's just good to introduce the concept of how you hold yourself does matter, both for your own confidence and for what is perceived by others.
And it changes your attitude. Your behavior and your body changes how you actually think sometimes.
So we show just this, in the spirit of fun and comedy, we showed this clip rather than her full TED Talk, or clips from her TED Talk to illustrate that.
You have a new book. It's called Presence, and bringing your boldest self to your biggest challenges. But a lot of people know you from these things called power poses, okay? What's a power pose?
Well, so if you won first place in a race and you crossed the finish line, what would you do with your body?
Yay! And then I would go straight to the hospital. Is that right?
That's a power pose. So power poses are postures that we adopt when we feel really confident and powerful. So we expand, we take up a lot of space, just like other animals do. And you know, Wonder Woman, great example. This one, Victory, great
How about
example.
man spreading? Does man spreading, is that a power
so-
pose?
Sadly it is, and I have gotten a couple of nasty emails from people in the world saying thanks a lot for manspreading. I don't think I spread that, I think it was out there before.
I wouldn't recommend it tonight.
No, definitely not.
Now, over 30 million people have watched your TED Talk on the power of body language.
Yes.
The second most watched TED Talk of all time. What's the first? What's the first one? Let's trash talk that first one for a second.
I would never trash talk. The first one is by Sir Ken Robinson.
Yeah.
And it's on education and
Blah, 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 blah. All right, you're number one. Let's push her over the top. Go to TED
Do
Talk,
not
watch
push
it
me over the
a
top.
couple more
I
million
should never
times.
ever be ahead of him.
But what, it sounds like what you're saying is that, you know, that woo is from I won. But if I just go, woo, I'll feel like I won, whether I did or not.
Well, I mean, you've probably heard that when you smile, it can make you feel happy. Makes me feel
I
happy.
haven't heard that actually.
Yeah,
Does it really good to smile
It
make
can
you
also
happy?
make you seem creepy, but
True. That's the part that makes me happy.
What do you guys? Sorry, this is, and stop me if this is too much. I'm deciding to think it was longer. What I listened to some podcasts on some of these big, like, because she's been torn down to some, like somewhat.
Yeah.
And what is that? Sometimes just when students push back, I like to know what the critique is, so I can. So like when I do implicit bias, I'm aware there are critiques of IIT. Here, the primary ones, so I'm familiar with them when they ask. Are like, is there a way in like 1 minute to synopsize the primary critique?
Well, I think their research hasn't been replicated.
Okay, that's okay.
This
in several
People haven't gotten the same exact results
Okay.
in terms of her exact studies, but I do think, I mean, I'm from a yoga background as well, and I think other work that's been done about posture and how that changes your behavior is certainly still valid.
Okay.
But yeah, that's I think.
Okay. It's easy.
Yeah.
Should we go?
Yes.
Okay.
So this next exercise is something that we demonstrate up front, and then we have the students do sort of in pairs to pair off. This is really focusing on that active listening aspect that we talked about in the introduction, to force them to not think ahead, to not be trying to already formulate their response before listening to what is being said. Just to tease it, one of our students actually came back after class and said, "This is the most useful thing I've learned in law school." And I was like, a little... but it felt pretty good.
Yeah.
So we're going to have you just have a conversation with a partner, and we'll partner off with, there's an odd number, so we'll partner off with someone. And we're just going to have a discussion about the weather, the day, whatever, the topic does not matter. And one person will start, and the next person has to start their sentence with the last word that the person finished with. Not only does this make you listen till the end, but it also helps you to be a good partner to set up your partner for success. So I might not want to end with a word that's really hard for Allison to start a new sentence with. So sort of being aware of that as you're speaking as well. So I might just simply say, "This rain is really making me feel a little bit down today."
Today's the last day of the conference, and I'm looking forward to headed home after this. Oh, darn it, headed home. That's what I meant to say, sorry.
Home is going to feel so good. I know that my husband misses me. See, that's exactly what I'm saying.
So that's what not to do. But when you're doing it, you have have to slow down.
Yeah.
So we'd like you all to practice.
But you can make even those hard ones work, so that also helps, you know,
You
with
could be like,
resilience
"Me."
and creative thinking. I miss my husband, you know, like,
Yeah.
so, example. So feel free to pair off, and Allison,
I
you
can
can
be
join
back.
action. And you can pick a topic of just today, the conference, your basically small talk.
But anyway. Well, we can start. I guess I just.
Are you getting on a plane?
Yeah, but you want to start
Planes?
So,
By asking me,
Where do you live? Where do you live in Pennsylvania?
Hugs. I get hugs from my kids.
Where's your
Southeast Pennsylvania. Near Gettysburg.
writing is one of the important skills.
Nice,
that our
good. I
students need
enjoy
to go out into their placements and their legal careers.
Right. Fall is.
My careers.
Also my birthday.
I think
My children's exercises and some kids are for bed, but she's.
Quickly, here's how I'm hoping to fall asleep.
Students are wonderful to work with.
Tonight feels like a long way away.
Ready to go.
Ahead is a full 8:30 of mid-semester meetings.
The world problems are so incredibly serious.
Especially for really hard for the organizations to like logistically, they are tough.
Family
Or situations
to
that
meet with us.
Definitely.
Because
Domestic and
design for the quality. Do those community meetings.
Environment, everything going around it right now. Gosh, I just.
Cousins are so fun to be. Definitely have like a 20-year surgery program with
my cousin needs to have kids in Tony's age, she doesn't.
All right, let's bring it
That
back.
was too hard.
I
know, I'm trying to figure out what
There's seconds went by.
But I am.
So what were your observations? What was challenging? What was fun? Yes.
Well, Sarah and I both talk incredibly quickly. And then when we're together, it's like on speed. Like, that's what my colleagues sort of said, oh my God, I can't even follow the two of you. That's sort of how we operate. But like, you know, just really for us to sort of slow down and be deliberate. But I actually feel like I also like, I know what she said, like I recall what she said because we were just sort of slowing down. So that like the speed aspect I think was really important, at least for me. In both listening and in communicating what I have to say.
Great.
Yeah, I come from a family of terrible interrupters. We talk very quickly, we interrupt each other, and that is really something I struggle with because my brain is going faster. So forcing me to listen to the very end of what she's saying and not jump ahead to wanting to jump in and say, oh, I want to jump on that point right now.
Yeah.
Setting up was super hard. I felt like, I mean, I almost was trying in my head to be like, what's a list of words that are not hard to because I kept the grammatical, like, you know, be a word like head, and you're like, how do I start a sentence with that? You know, the ways we end sentences, it's hard to pick up and start from there.
But I think that goes to the mindfulness piece of this, because you're really, it's almost like an anchor to your brain to the present moment, because you're focusing on the conversation itself and you're not thinking about, well, the point of this is I'm trying to get this information and move on to X, Y, Z, and I know I'm leaving at this time, so I think it brings that distraction level down a little bit.
And I think it's just another way to, you know, practice creativity too. You know, you're trying to take care of your partner, but sometimes things are challenging and challenges arise, and it's again going to that quickness of thinking and being quick on your feet. So there's that aspect to this exercise that can bring out. And we had, I think a lot of what we've seen with our students is they comment how they feel like they have to be ready to answer at the end of every sentence because they're feeling like they don't want to be perceived as slow or you know, dumb. And that this really helped them see that it's okay to take that pause, it's okay to think for a moment before responding. So we've gotten some good feedback on that as well.
When you do this with students, do you prompt them with a topic, or do you let each pair discuss whatever they want to?
We don't usually prompt them because I think it can be more difficult.
Yeah.
It's helpful, I think, to develop organically.
Yeah.
But you could get that.
Just pick something really neutral.
Or say,
you know.
talk about.
What your weekend plans are, or I think that's what
I
we've
think
done.
we did.
We try and keep it real general.
Yeah. Okay.
Or what did, yeah.
Well, our conversation just meandered so much because I was trying so hard to fit into the last word.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that was actually, I found really frustrating because there were things I wanted to follow up on and delve into more depth, but we just kind of circled away.
Which I think it brings up an interesting aspect, which is control. Often in conversations, we try to control where it heads, and this, you basically have to step back and you don't have that control. You're just really listening and responding. And I think that's an interesting aspect.
So do you have pushback from students on some of this? Because I teach, I did a communication skills kind of module, and I did an exercise where I talked a little bit about mindfulness and not having your head in multiple places simultaneously. And the students were actually really resistant and really believed, no, we are here, we want to get things done. We don't have time to listen to, my client vent. I have an agenda and I need to get through it. So I don't know how, like, when you get that pushback, how do you kind of, I guess, get the message across?
So I liken this to, this was a critique that was brought up by our assistant dean for experiential learning, and she said, I couldn't see 1Ls doing this, and I said, well, we do it with 2Ls and 3Ls in an externship program, because 1Ls come in, they want to learn legal stuff, they want to get down to business, they don't want like soft skills, I don't need that. But what I liken it to is the whole professional journey. You come into law school sort of knowing yourself internally. We teach you to think like a lawyer, change your analytical thinking, and then push you out into the street and you lose that connection with who you are. And so to me, this is the sort of the internal coming in, the external think like a lawyer, and now we're teaching again the internal. Who are you connecting to as a person? Find your personal style, find the skills that work for you in the workplace, and then integrate that moving out. And so that's sort of how I look at it. And that's just as important as the thinking like a lawyer piece, because you can't serve anyone if you don't have these other skills.
And we teach this as, we occasionally on the yes and get some, I think that's where we've received sort of the most pushback of, like, I'm just not in an environment that sort of feeds into that. And we talk, we talk about this being a tool for your tool belt, just to like, keep this in mind, keep this perspective for yourself, be open to new ideas for yourself. And while it may not apply to every situation, there are valuable nuggets in here for everyone.
I mean, there might be opportunities where students are involved with support staff where they can yes and them and make them feel if they're in a more powerful role that they can use this in a leadership capacity in that way and going forward. Yeah.
I want to push back on your assistant dean for experiential learning a little bit about first years, because I teach, in addition to running the externship program, I teach a mandatory first year course, the first 8 weeks of school, called the Intro to Lawyer-Client Relationship, and it's teaching them, introducing them to client interviewing skills.
We have something similar,
And as we're doing this, I totally see how I could use some of this, because we do an interviewing exercise where they interview each other in the first class, and then they have to tell the other person's story, but I could also see using some of these exercises to kind of get them, especially that last one that we just did, to teach them about being present and mindful and active listening. And I mean, one of the things that I think that class does is it helps them hold on to who they are when they, and feel good about who they are as whatever they're bringing to law school, as opposed to sort of being stripped away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I think it could work for first years. So.
And you can also sort of play with that, like with the last word, you're really reflecting back to them in a way what they said, which of course is, a mediation technique, and a psychological technique, all sorts of helpful ways to help people make them feel heard, and so that can be brought in as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and affirmed, you know, yeah.
Okay. So next up, we're gonna all come down and gather in the front of the room.
One of the things we try and do when we're putting together a class of exercises, because we do different exercises for the different levels, is we try and have some for those who feel more comfortable in their seats, but can all participate, some where we have everyone participate, and some where we have, you know, a few volunteers. So that everyone is active, but not everyone has to necessarily be the center of attention if they don't want to.
Yeah.
So this is a pattern exercise, and we're going to start with all having our fingers pointed towards the sky or the ceiling. And we're going to start a pattern. So I'll start and point to someone and say a word. The second person is going to say a related word and point to someone else, who is then going to say a related word and point to someone else until everyone in the circle has gone, and we'll know that because all of our fingers are pointed. We're here till 9:45, right?
No, you're
Okay.
good, I'm sorry. And
Okay.
I
No,
I occasionally get conference texts, so
Okay.
I apologize. I am in the moment.
I'm being aware of my surroundings and being like, wait, did I
We're
get the
good,
time
we're
wrong?
good.
Okay.
You get text on your wrist?
That's my little Fitbit text. And I'm sorry that wasn't rude, but I just.
No, I did not
conference
perceive it
people.
as rude. It
Yeah.
just made me reflect on the
Made you aware.
time.
And I wasn't reflecting both if I missed the last part of the instruction.
So it may be something like, I might start with apple, and then you could, you know.
Banana.
All right, let's just go with this.
Banana.
Blueberry, peach.
Grapefruit.
Pineapple.
And then you point back to me.
Okay, melon.
Okay, and we're just going to keep repeating this pattern for a little while. Apple.
Same word?
Yep, same word. We're just repeating it until we get really comfortable with this pattern.
Okay.
Apple.
Banana.
Blueberry, peach.
Grapefruit.
Pineapple.
Melon.
Apple.
Banana.
Blueberry, peach.
Grapefruit.
Pineapple.
Melon.
Apple.
Banana.
Blueberry, peach.
Grapefruit.
Pineapple. It's too early in the morning.
Let's try, I know. Let's try and keep it going like nice and smooth and maybe a little bit faster. Apple.
Banana.
Blueberry, peach.
Grapefruit.
Pineapple.
Melon.
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 Okay, great. We're going to put our fingers back up and we're going to start a brand new pattern with someone else pointing and starting a brand new pattern. And we're going to get that going nice and smooth as well. Try to point to different people than you pointed to before if possible.
Do you want me to start?
Sure?
Salad.
Sorry.
Let's try,
Sorry.
let's try a
That's too hard.
non-food related,
Okay.
simply because we have the,
Bicycle.
Truck. Oh, done. What do you want to be? Sorry. Truck.
Car.
Scooter.
Skateboard.
you took all the good ones. Pogo stick.
Back to her.
Skates. Bicycle.
Truck.
Car.
Scooter.
Skateboard.
Pogo stick.
Skates.
Bicycle.
Truck.
Car.
Scooter.
Skateboard.
Pogo stick.
Skates.
Bicycle.
Truck.
Car.
Scooter.
Skateboard.
Pogo stick.
Skates.
Bicycle.
Truck.
Car.
Scooter.
Skateboard.
Pogo stick.
Skates. Bicycle.
Truck.
Car.
Scooter.
Skateboard.
Pogo stick.
Skates.
Bicycle.
Truck.
Car.
Scooter.
Skateboard.
Pogo stick.
Skates.
Apple.
Banana.
Bicycle.
Blueberry.
Truck.
Pineapple.
Peach.
Grapefruit.
Apple.
Banana.
Blueberry. Peach.
Grapefruit.
Pineapple.
Melon.
Apple.
Banana.
Bicycle.
Truck.
Car.
Scooter.
Peach.
Skateboard.
Peach.
Pogo stick.
Grapefruit.
Pineapple.
Melon.
Bicycle.
Apple.
Truck. Banana.
Car.
Blueberry. Peach.
Scooter.
Skateboard.
Grapefruit.
Pineapple. Skates.
Melon.
Bicycle.
Truck.
Apple.
Car.
Banana.
Grapefruit.
Peach.
Scooter.
Skateboard.
Grapefruit.
Pineapple. Skates.
Melon.
Bicycle.
Truck.
Car.
Apple.
Scooter.
Banana.
Blueberry.
Skateboard.
Peach.
Grapefruit.
Pogo stick.
Pineapple.
Melon.
Bicycle.
Truck.
Apple.
Car.
Banana.
Scooter.
Skateboard.
Peach.
Pogo stick.
Grapefruit.
Pineapple.
Bicycle.
Oh, that was the same time.
Truck and melon.
Car.
Banana.
Scooter.
Peach.
Skateboard.
Grapefruit.
Pogo stick.
Pineapple.
Melon.
Bicycle.
Truck.
Apple.
Car.
Banana.
Scooter.
Blueberry.
Skateboard.
Peach.
Grapefruit.
Pogo stick.
Pineapple.
Melon.
Bicycle.
Truck.
Car.
Scooter.
Skateboard.
All right, we'll stop it there.
Woo!
You all were really, really good at this.
Yeah, this was
like really one of the best we've seen. So,
Sometimes we could have added a third even.
we could have. I do want to save time for the last one. Though.
Okay.
So what was hard about this?
Mine were really close, Like I was just like, at one point I literally couldn't say both words.
Yeah.
But like every time I felt like that happened to me.
Oh, my first time I said the wrong, right? I said the fruit instead of the vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so.
So yeah, I mean, you were dealing with competing interests, which is what we talk about when we talk about this, and trying to manage communication when there's a lot going on. And what made it successful? When it was really flowing, sort of what were things you used to make sure that that things kept moving?
Eye contact.
Eye contact.
That was so helpful.
And mindfulness, being present.
Yeah.
You had to really,
You had to sort of observe the whole
you had to really
thing.
focus.
Yeah.
I only focused on the
Yeah.
people that matter to me,
Yes.
and I ignored
Isn't that-
everything else.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a great way to put that down.
But when it got going, I actually started, I heard the person before me. So like whoever was pointing to her then was about to point to me, I started anticipating, okay, I'm gonna be next. So it's like, it was interesting because I realized I was like a step ahead.
Your brain starts picking up on
Yeah.
patterns. Our brains are sort of naturally wired to pick up on patterns even when we're not quite realizing it. So that can also bring up the point of like the more you practice good communication skills, the more this will become natural.
There was also an incentive to help each other and work together, so
Yeah.
that
Right.
just felt like we all wanted to succeed.
Yes.
Right? So we were trying to kind of be like, okay, yeah.
Yes, and you can add a third pattern on top of that as well if you want to make things really interesting, which if you all were students and you were this good at it, I would have likely done.
How many of the most number you have in a circle do you think?
15, I think.
So you're right. So you can break into two circles if you have somebody else that if you're co-presenting,
Yeah.
which is helpful.
Yeah, and I think delivering the message, you sometimes talk about this, eye contact's good, but if someone's looking elsewhere, you have to be like,
Yes, using the whole body.
Yeah.
To make sure, to be sure that your message is received. Like I use that eye contact to make sure that the person I'm intending to give it to has received it. All right. Do you think we have time?
That's really fun.
we have
You
one
guys
more.
have time.
Okay.
The one reason, I gotta step out because I've got to meet somebody.
Okay.
For the next session.
Sure, it's gonna take us.
Yeah, please do. But yeah, you guys have done the plenary's at 10, so. If I don't see you, have a good one.
All right, thanks.
I'll take care of all this later.
Okay, so this next exercise is called Panel of Experts, and we're really going back to that nonverbal communication. We're talking about confidence, projecting confidence. So we asked for 3 volunteers, which will be most of you. Could we get this side of the room, perhaps?
This is putting it all together in some way.
Yes.
I do have to leave promptly in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Is that
Yes.
my participation, is that okay?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. So what we do is we ask for the class to provide fake expertise for each person. And they're really, really out there. Like, so we've had people say, this person is an expert on the outer fuzz of tennis balls, something that someone would never be an expert on. And then we have the class, ask questions of this panel of experts. They have to answer confidently and really convince us that they are experts in this field. So because of time, let me quickly, can I have an expertise here?
Shoestrings.
Shoestrings. You are like shoelaces?
Yeah, shoelaces.
Okay, shoelaces.
I'm not very confident.
You know everything there is to know about shoelaces. And here?
An astroturf expert.
AstroTurf. Okay, all right.
Soccer player.
And then, are an expert on the properties of gelatin, specifically in strawberry jello. All right, so welcome to our panel. We have some really wonderful experts here today, and we're gonna have them introduce themselves, let us know about their credentials and their background in this area, and then we'll open it up for questions. So please, introduce us, tell us your name, and how you got into your field.
So my name is June Tai, and I am an expert in the properties of Jell-O, is particularly as related to strawberry gelatin. I started in this area by studying chemistry and also did a minor in food science and eventually obtained a PhD studying how gelatin forms and the changes that happen when gelatin is combined with strawberry flavoring, because it doesn't gel in the same way due to the chemical reactions of the fruit.
Excellent.
Hi, my name is Sarah Jackson. I'm a specialist in AstroTurf. I came by this because I played soccer for years and years, often on AstroTurf, and suffered a fair degree of AstroTurf-related injuries. And so when I continued on studying science as well, I was wondering, is there a way that we could make a playing surface that is less harmful to our bodies when we fall, but continues to move the game along and maybe perform slightly more akin to grass. So I had to learn in depth how AstroTurf works and its properties so that I could develop something. I'm working on developing something that actually is equally fast moving but less harmful to players and closer to grass.
Fabulous.
Hello, I'm Lexi. You know, for me, the study of shoelaces begins when I was really young. Many of you who have children know that children typically learn how to tie their shoes at, age 4, 5, 6, maybe, somewhere in that range. I was a shoelace tire at 2. So I really, shoelaces, I sort of knew then that it was my calling, right? And then since then have studied, I have a degree from the Fashion Institute of Technology, which most of you know is sort of the premier place when it comes to fabrics and sewing and design. And for me, a shoelace can make the statement on a shoe, right? So I have studied how to weave things, right? How you sort of add in pops of color, right? And then also functionality, right? Different types of shoes call for different types of laces. So I have studied from A to Z shoelaces, and it's a very niche field, as one might imagine. So I really feel like I have become, sorry, I'm kicking myself.
Oh, I just have
I'm not
to say,
kidding.
all of you are amazing.
So this is a speed panel, so we have time for one question for each, and we'll start over here since I know you have some other responsibilities.
Yes.
For shoelace, for another shoelace.
Yeah, we have a shoelace conference across the street.
Yep, yeah,
I have a question.
great.
What properties make the best shoelaces? What would you say?
I have to go back to my original point. It's all about the shoe. It really depends. I can't answer that universally, right? If it's a dress shoe versus a sneaker versus a little child shoe, you have to have a different sort of strength, right, for a little child who's learning to walk. So there's a variety of chemicals, and I should say while I was at FIT, I was also getting a certificate in chemistry, because you do have to figure out sort of, as my colleague was not my colleague, my co-panelist was talking about, you need to figure out how things work together, but I don't think there's a blanket answer for that. It depends on the shoe and the wearer even.
Wonderful. All right, and do we have an AstroTurf question?
What type of materials are you looking into fabricating your AstroTurf out of?
I'm looking at various types of polyurethanes, things that are maybe a little bit softer. Right now, AstroTurf is usually a combination of kind of plastic and little balls that also gets all over you and gets stuck. So I'm seeing if there's any way that we can do away with that, still have the kind of cushion that you need, but without the scratchy rub. So I'm actually, I have a what's it called, a contract out for people to bring me ideas that we could, kind of do test runs of.
I have a question about Jell-O, specifically the strawberry Jell-O. I know that for a lot of medical procedures, you can't have the red Jell-O before you have those procedures. Are you doing any work in the field of adjusting colors of different flavors based on medical necessity?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're studying is whether or not, say, strawberry Jell-O needs to be red at all. Maybe we could have a blue strawberry Jell-O, for example, and that would not interfere with medical procedures. So we're looking at all the ramifications of changing color and how that might affect your perception of the taste of the Jell-O.
Wonderful. All right, let's give a hand to our panelists.
You guys were awesome. That was really fun.
So this usually
Love
goes for
that.
about 15 minutes or so. The class generally gets very into the questioning because they're trying to like stump their
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we've just seen an incredible job from people get really into this. And so we talk about what makes somebody seem like an expert.
Right.
What projects the confidence, even though there's no possible way they could be an expert in
Right.
these fields. So
Awesome.
that really ties together a lot of the things we've been talking about today, and you're able to bring in.
Do you do all these things in different classes? Is this all one class? Does it depend? Like,
It's all one, so we have sort of a curriculum for our entry-level interns, and then we have an advanced for repeat interns, so we build upon.
so it's like different sessions in one semester? Is that, or all in one hour time frame?
75 minutes, we do it.
You do all this,
We do
okay.
about 5 exercises.
Oh, cool, okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. And what do you title
how
that
many
class if
students?
they're, if it's on their syllabus, what do you call
One
it?
class is 12 and the other's 34.
Oh, so it works in that, okay, because I have
Yeah.
35-ish, okay.
Yeah,
Good.
and here are the handouts which describe the
This is great.
exercises,
Yeah.
the skills that are taught, and then some of the debrief questions.
This is really great stuff.
Thank
So do you
guys.
call it, you don't call it improvisation in the syllabus, or do you?
So, well, I call it
Thank you.
communication, and
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I assign the communication and collaboration chapters from Learning for Practice.
Okay.
And, yeah, we don't call it improv in the syllabus, I think I do call it communication.
Okay, okay. Oh, I love it. So it's
Which ones, do you guys both have improv backgrounds?
Just
So,
Leah.
actually, I'm the director of admissions and financial aid, and I studied improv in New York for 6 to 8 years,
awesome.
and then
No wonder.
met my
it's a
husband.
non-lawyer.
Met my husband doing improv, so I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
And Allison and I were having a discussion. I used to work at Columbia. I know some of you all have heard this, so. I would work at Columbia Business School, and they brought in improvisers for orientation. So I was talking about sort of the ways it connects, and
I think it's the
Allison was
next
like, "Let's do
frontier in
this."
law school. I mean, a lot of business schools are doing this.
Yeah.
And this is sort of, students have liked it, and I put up some feedback that we've gotten.
Yeah.
So that's been, because we were like, I don't know, let's just do this and see what happens. And it's been pretty well received. So that's been great. And then I think this is the book, we list this on the sheet too, Bob Bulhan, who's teaching this at Duke to business students.
Okay.
Yeah, and so.
Yes, and.
Yeah.
Getting to
Okay,
yes,
so
yeah.
and, okay.
Yeah.
But I think this is really key, how improvisation strengthens all the leader's soft skills, which often turn out to be hard skills after all.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
thank you. Yeah, this
Thank
is
you.
great. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you all
Thank
for
you
coming.
guys, no, that was
Thank you.
great. That's
That was
my favorite
awesome.
thing to go with
Thank
like
you.
concrete ideas, so good.
Helpful.
Yeah. It was fun. I know, super fun.
For Sunday at 8:30.
Class too, because I had no idea about big class.
And it injects fun into their day too. They're not used to
The thing, yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.